Welcome everyone. This is Career Conversations. This is our first time doing this on New World Order. Everything's online now until things get better, until we're back to moving outside. But it just gives us an opportunity to be a little bit more, I guess, personable and do a little bit more networking from home, which is what it's all about anyways. So I've shared links to our speakers' information so you can look at our LinkedIn profiles and then you can get in touch with them through that. If you have any questions that weren't answered on this platform, be sure to reach out to them. They are great guys and great ladies. They love to help out. So if you have a question that's not answered right now, reach out to them directly. Also include your questions in the chat box. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a thing there called chat. If you have any questions or you just want to make a comment, leave a message there and someone will try to attend to that. Other logistics, if you're not talking, I would say just kind of either put your microphone on mute or just do your best to have like a quiet background. Really appreciate it. But this is Career Conversations. The goal is just to give either incoming college students or current college students a chance to maximize the college experience. Even if you already kind of know what career you want to be in and what you want to do with your future, it's an opportunity to meet professionals who are already doing that same thing you're going to be doing. So you get personal advice on what kind of classes, what kind of internships, what type of job opportunities are out there, and just any kind of questions you may have. So we typically try to do this event with the colleges in the Houston area, Rice, HBU, TSU, and I think, and this is kind of my fault, in the past year we can be kind of slacking. So we're really trying to get back to doing this event with Rice's and, even if A&M, we really would like to, meet with you guys in person, bring in professionals, and talk to you guys one-on-one, doing your weekly meetings or doing one of your ASA weeks. So we appreciate you guys joining us, and we'll get things started off maybe with a little introduction from our panelists, and then I'll let Abby kind of kick things off from there with questions.
So who's going to go first?
Yeah.
Me? Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Katoon. I am a labor and employment attorney here in Houston. So what I do is I represent companies when they are in the middle of disputes with their employees. So that's big companies, small companies. I represent them. It's a litigation practice, which means we represent them in court. We might also help with agreements, like if you've ever signed an employment agreement, that would be part of something that I would help with, or employee handbook would be something I'd help with. So that's what I do now, but I graduated from the University of Houston in 2005, and I graduated with a degree in chemical engineering. And I didn't even really know I wanted to be an engineer before I went to school to be one, but I did know I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I've always kind of wanted to be a lawyer, but you have to do something in undergrad. And so engineering seemed right because I liked math and science, and I was kind of good at it. And I did something that would allow me to get a scholarship at school, which is engineering. I actually worked as an engineer for a few years after graduating in 2005. And so I worked for Chevron as an engineer from 2005 to 2012. And then I went to law school starting in 2010. So, hold on 1 second. I'm not able to mute somebody. Hold on. All right, so I went to I worked at Chevron as an engineer, and at the same time I went to law school for a couple of the years that I was in law school. And that was interesting. But it allowed me to keep working, keep making money while I was in law school. And then I finished in 2013 and I transitioned to full-time law. And so I've been doing law since then. Yeah, so that's my intro. We can pass it to Albert.
You can hear me now. Hello, my name is Albert Okagbue. I am an accountant, a CPA. I have been a CPA for exactly 10 years now. My CPA license is now 10 years old. I started my career in 2009, January, right around a period, not a lot different from what we're going through right now. And I graduated in 2008 with a master's in accounting from UT. That is what brought me to Texas. I came from Missouri, University of Missouri, Kansas City, where I got my undergrad. I have always wanted to be an accountant since maybe 14. And I just basically pursued that single-handedly. It's a little bit different from why I'm here today, because I have learned over time that most people are not likely to consider a profession that they haven't met someone in. So I'm here to share about what I do, but I had never met an accountant. I had never met an accountant until I met my accounting professors at around 18 or 19. So then I worked for Deloitte & Touche, which is a big 4 accounting firm. I think they're number 2 in Houston office for 2 years. I went from there to starting my own practice, first part-time for a few years and then full-time for 7 years now, maybe. So yeah, that's my story. I'm married with 2 kids.
All right, Esther, you want to go next, please?
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
Hi everyone. My name is Esther, Dr. Esther Oluo, and I am a dentist in Houston. Like Abby, I went to University of Houston for undergrad. I got a Bachelor of Science in Biology and health. I got a minor in health, and I graduated from U of H in 2012. I then actually taught for like a semester or 2 while I was applying and taking my test to get into dental school. And then I started dental school in 2013 fall. And I went to Texas A&M, the dental school in Dallas. So it used to be called Texas A&M Baylor College of Dentistry, but now it's just Texas A&M College of Dentistry. I graduated from there in 2017. So I practice as an associate dentist for Southern Dental Associates. So we have multiple practices and there's like an associate for each practice. I also have my own contracting that I do. So I go to different dental offices when they need, let's say the doctor is sick or they don't have coverage for a day. So I go through and I contract at different dental offices. So that's also my little side business I do there with that. And I guess I wanted to be a dentist starting from 9th grade. My parents forced me to go to high school for health professions. I didn't want to go there, but my sister went there, so my mom thought it was like a good school, but I'm glad. Sometimes we take our parents for granted when they make us do things, but it worked out for me because like Albert said, in 9th grade, my 9th grade teacher was actually a dentist. She was a Black female dentist, and I never met one of those. And she was my favorite teacher. And I actually had my 10th grade teacher, we had like a dental class in 10th grade. And she was also a real dentist that taught high school part-time. And I got to do like x-rays and dental molds and things like that. That's how I was like confirmed I want to be a dentist. Also at the High School for Health Professions, they make us do things like draw each other's blood and test each other's urine, and we go to the hospital and we actually are like CNAs and do like different rotations in different departments in the hospital. So you get to see all fields of all medical fields. And I knew that I did not want to work in a hospital. So I was like, I don't want to work in a hospital. So I was like, okay, well, how can I be a doctor and not work in a hospital? So that was another thing. It confirmed to me I didn't want to be any other type of doctor. So that's how I kind of narrowed into dentistry, and I kind of knew from high school. So I went into college with that mentality.
Thank you, Dr. Ojumah. AJ, you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is AJ. First name is Ayoola, last name is John. Just go by AJ. I actually graduated from the University of Houston with a degree in petroleum engineering. I graduated 2019, actually, graduating 6 years. So I guess for people that are sort of in college or recently graduated, I think hopefully my story resonates with you. But I studied petroleum engineering. I interned with most of the oil and gas companies. So I interned with ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and when before I graduated, I started a online education company, Vladimir, which is what I'm running right now. Started doing that, and that kind of took off, and I just kind of ran with it. Right now, I do 3 things. So I run Vladimir, the company. I also have a human experience design lab focused on creating technology around virtual and augmented reality, as well as artificial intelligence. And the third thing is I'm also the digital program manager at Chevron. So kind of balancing all of that out. And so hopefully we get to talk more about that. But nice to meet everyone.
Very cool. Those sound like 3 really big hats. All right. So those are our panelists. And so I will throw out questions when I don't see that anyone has their hand raised or has a question in the group chat. So Ifunanya, do you want to say your question, or should I read it? If you'd like to say it yourself, you can just unmute and go ahead. Okay, I'll do it for you. Okay, she's Ifunanya. I don't know if Ifunanya is a lady or a gentleman, but at what point in high school or college do you think you should have your career plan figured out? At what point in your high school or college career do you think you should have your career plan figured out? What do you guys think, panelists?
I kind of tried to answer in there, but I mean, the sooner you know, of course, it's going to be better for you because you can kind of take the necessary steps, but don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take your time, because a lot of people spend a lot of money getting a degree they never use, or being in a job that they don't like. So definitely take your time and do the research. I know in the medical field, one thing you can do is shadowing. That helped me up. I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that I could shadow, but even if you are not in a school like that, you can take time and like do like summer internships, or just kind of whatever field it is, kind of go see what they're doing and see if it's something for you. So the sooner you start doing that, the better you kind of have an idea of what you do and don't like. And then you can kind of go into college, taking the right classes you need to take, being in the right trajectory. So you don't waste time, taking classes you don't need to take, or money taking classes you don't need to take.
I would add to that, that I don't think you're in a bad position if you don't have it figured out yet. Because, I like to say, and I didn't coin this phrase, but I like to say, while you have life, you have hope, and you can figure it out. So I was an engineer, and I liked it, and I had a pretty good gig, and I decided I wanted to do something different, and I did. I've had no less than 3 careers in my very short life, because I think I'm very young. But anyway, so you can totally switch gears if you'd like. Now, Albert is on here, and we have had full discussions about this because I think he has a position financially. If you can figure out what you want to do earlier, you can save a lot of money, because college is a really expensive finishing school if you don't know what you want to do. And, you know, I don't want to get political, but recently we've talked a lot about student loan forgiveness. And a lot of people think that they're owed student loan forgiveness because their degree is worthless. And so I think it behooves you not to get a degree that's not going to pay for itself later. Maybe Albert wants to add more to that.
Thank you, Abby. Honestly, Esther, I like your answer. I was going to say, as someone who decided at 13 what he would do, and basically since 14 has been only thinking about doing one thing, I don't think there's a rule that you should figure it out that early. I also, what Abby said, it definitely helps. It helps you not just financially, but professionally. I have a friend who I knew at 13, 14, kind of 15, right before I came to the US, who is an accountant right now in another country. And I remember he messaged me several years ago on Facebook, and he said that he would tell people about me because I had already decided at 13 and he hadn't decided at that point. So he felt like, you know, I had this huge advantage because I could start planning my career, planning my life, planning my interests, planning my extracurriculars, and just kind of prepping myself for this thing because I had committed to it. But he found out much later. So there is an advantage. On the other hand, I think the biggest thing you need to worry about is not being honest with yourself. So if you know that you don't know, then you need to make decisions like someone who does not know. If you know that you do know, you need to make decisions like someone who knows. For example, if you do not know what you're going to major in, it's probably not in your best interest to be getting the most expensive degree you can get your hands on, even if you're going to pay for it, because you do not know what you're going to do. Maybe you should save your money for when you know what you're going to do. So I'm more concerned about you being honest with yourself and not being shy about not having figured it out, you know? So I'll tell you a secret. Most people haven't figured it out. You know, there's people, you meet someone today, they're a CEO, and you figure, oh my goodness, they're a CEO, and then the next year they quit to become a monk or something, right? You don't, just people evolve, people change over time. So don't beat yourself up because you don't have some answer that everybody's magically supposed to have. Just make good decisions along the way, and we can talk more about what that means. But I would focus on that.
And I think, AJ, it makes sense for you to go next, especially because we have a question that says that they've been following your story for a while, and they really want to know how you switch your career gears effectively, especially when you're interested in multiple things.
Right. So I really like everybody's answers, and hey, CG. So I think for me, the way I approach it is, this is coming from somebody that graduated in 6 years intentionally. I had a full scholarship, and it was every year I had to sort of apply for new scholarships because I wanted the ability to sort of take my time and figure things out. So, and I didn't graduate in 6 years because I was sort of struggling in school. No, I had internships every summer and every other semester. I literally took 2 years off to go do internships, and I ended up graduating with 3.9 GPA in petroleum engineering. So I was doing well, but I still thought that my philosophy has always been, when you're young, sort of do everything. Like I think there's people that figure out what they want to do very quickly or have an idea of what they want to focus on very quickly. And I think that's great. That's actually perfect because then you can just kind of go get it. But I think for a lot of people, and me, including me, like obviously I set myself up for early success by, you know, doing well in school, things like that. But I remember in high school, like I thought I ran track, so I thought I was going to be a track star. And then I ended up getting an engineering scholarship. I was like, oops, you know, makes sense. And I'm African. And so obviously I went to school to study engineering. While I was there though, I quickly started to, at first I was like, okay, I want to be an engineer. And then I realized, well, I was entering college at a time where the price of oil was going down. It's kind of like getting a petroleum engineering gig wasn't that easy anymore. And even getting any internship, like a lot of you might have figured out, is not that easy. So I had to really start opening up my lens, like, to opportunities. And that's why I found really my core philosophy, and just explore everything. So yes, I did intern with, as a petroleum engineer at Exxon, but I also I interned as a trading analyst at Goldman Sachs. I interned in trading in BP, like just started to do different things. I interned as a business analyst with a startup in California. And, I worked in a yogurt shop. I worked in an ice cream shop, like learning, understanding how to manage retail. Like I did all these different things. And I think that's so important, because giving yourself permission to just try different things regardless. And obviously, yeah, your counselor would say, make sure you go do this, or, there's always pressure on to like figure it out. I think you should do as much as you can to buy yourself space and time to explore. So apply for those scholarships, because then they really relieve you of like, oh, I'm paying for school. So obviously it's hard to do different things if school is costing you. So try to get those scholarships, try to buy yourself as much optionality with what you focus on. And that's ultimately how I would approach it. But as much as you can, do different things very quickly. Even now, I still do different things, because yes, I now know what I enjoyed. I know what I'm really good at. I don't practice petroleum engineering today, and I just graduated last year, right? I'm now very much into tech and interactive design. And that's because I gave myself permission to try different things and find out what I like. And even now, even within my space, I'm still doing different things. And I'm still figuring out what I like. And the more you can do that when you're young, when you're older, then you have that one thing that you're the best in the country at, or you're the best in the world. And I think that should always be, at least that's been my goal, is to figure out that one thing I can do better than everybody. And I enjoy doing more than everybody else, and focus on that. But it's really a game of start with all this and narrow it down into something you care about. But you have to be open-minded. That's the biggest thing, and give yourself permission, because it's hard to do that sometimes.
Absolutely. The next question seems to be towards you, AJ, but I'm gonna expand it a little bit. So Olu's question is, how can college students take ownership of their college journey, and what resources can they use to achieve this? And I think you actually kind of talked about it in your last response, so maybe you can expand a little bit. But then I'll expand the question for the rest of the panelists also, and ask a little bit about, the question is about taking ownership of your college journey, but how did you get your internships or exposure to the areas that you kind of eventually went into, or to areas that you decided weren't for you? How did you do that while you were in college, and what's your advice in that regard? AJ?
Yeah, so I think, I appreciate, it's a good question, Olu. I think one of the things that I think as a college student, I think your first job is to get a 4.0 GPA as a student, right? Like, I feel like that's like the foundation. Like, if you had a 4.0, a lot of things become easier to accomplish, if that makes sense. So I think, like, if I was starting over college again, which is what I did the first time, but if I was doing it again, I'll do the exact same thing. Make sure I have a 4.0. Everything less than a 4.0, there's room for improvement, right? And once you kind of have that under your belt, the next step is to explore everything possible. And so one thing that I found to be a life hack in college that I feel like people that know is like being a part of organizations like NASB, for example, National Society of Black Engineers. So even if you're an accountant, being a part of like National Association of Black Accountants, or National Society of Hispanic Engineers, like there's just different organizations that you should definitely plug into and go to the conferences. I think my freshman and sophomore year, like I would go to these career fairs on campus thinking I was going to get hired, and the joke was on me because I wasn't hired by anybody. But going to a conference was a whole different ballgame, because companies were there to literally just hire you on the spot. And so that's a huge life hack if that's something you haven't explored yet. But definitely join the organizations on campus and go to the national conferences and recruit with them. The other one is you have to start early, building telling your story to people, telling your story to the public. So I've met so many people that do really cool things, like in your free time, like, oh, like I'm a computer science student, like built this website in my free time. Like, don't just do that and hide it. Like, go on LinkedIn and talk about it. Like, you know, go on Instagram and talk about it. It's not just like, Instagram is not only there for you to flex. Like, talk about the things you're doing that are cool. Like, you'd be surprised how many recruiters follow you on Instagram and look at what you're doing and be like, oh, like, I actually want to support you now. So do different things, but don't just do different things, but also tell your story along the way and let people know you're doing different things. That's how I'd approach it. And that's what I found to be successful.
All right, I'll open that up to our other panelists as well. What kind of things did you do in undergrad to get experience and exposure to the area that you ended up being in, or maybe areas that you decided you wouldn't go into?
Let me say that don't be afraid to be really good with your teachers. For me, probably a turning point in my accounting career was the freshman year. I went and I met with a professor of an accounting professor, and he gave me a list. Gave me a list of classes that I needed to take to become a CPA in the state of Missouri or Kansas. I was in that area. And he said that I needed to take them in this order. And someone else, an advisor, maybe they thought I couldn't do it, had suggested a different order. And the professor said, if you take them in that order, you won't finish in time, right? So for me, that relationship, because I met with him, I requested a meeting with him after the first test in our class. He thought I was gonna complain about my grade. So that's the first thing I'll say is just, you know, people don't use their office hours, the teacher's office hours at all. You know, go and ask them questions. They probably, I'll say that most professors haven't been in the business world in a long time, but they're still in touch with their best student from last year. So guys like AJ here, he has professors talking about him right now and telling students, hey, I know a guy who did X, Y, and Z. This is what he did. And so it's very recent. So I had the one that professor used to talk about. He eventually came to see us before I graduated in one of my classes, but the professor would talk about what he did, how he did it, and how he went where he went. And so I would start with your professors. Don't just go and take the class and go home. You know, talk to them after class, request to meet with them. Whatever you know about yourself is useful. So if you know that you're in a biology class, but you haven't decided to do anything related to biology, I would meet with the professor and tell them that. Tell them, you know, how do I know if this is for me? What could I do to find out if this is for me? Maybe they'll have a suggestion. And then if you've made up your mind, same thing. They'll always have something they can do, point you in the right direction. So that's one thing I would say.
So when I was in undergrad, I, like AJ, had a lot of internships. And so I worked at Shell. And when I don't know if anybody here is an engineering degree, so that's why I'm going to tell this story that may or may not be interesting. So when I worked at Shell, I worked in environmental health and safety my first 2 summers. And that was kind of interesting to me, but I didn't get to go out and, you know, look at equipment and see it be built and all of that stuff. So I knew I kind of liked environmental health and safety, but I wanted to see more stuff and get down in the dirt, or not really the dirt, but you know what I mean. And so then my next internship, let's see, I did KBR, which is Kellogg Brown and Root. And we did lots of design. They're an EPC company. And I did that for 1 semester, kind of like a mini co-op. And it was cool, but I thought that they were really tight with their funds because, you know, they're dependent on the majors. And so it just seemed like they were cheap. And so I kind of didn't really like that. And I didn't intern there again. Then I did an internship again at Shell at the Deer Park refinery. And then I got to actually touch stuff, feel stuff, climb up reactors. I got to design a project and actually have it be built. And I thought that was really cool. I liked project work. And so I was glad to have that experience. I worked at Dow Chemical 1 semester as a co-op. Same thing, I got to actually see the plant, but I worked in a plant that one of the one of the intermediate things that we made was phosgene gas, and I kept thinking I'm going to die one day if there's a leak of some sort, and I was like, I'm not really about this life. So anyway, I tell that story because all of these different internships kind of gave me a view towards something else within the practice of chemical engineering. And so when I finally got 2 offers from Chevron, I had one that was an offshore offer, I had one that was in the technology group, and I'd be working on projects that seemed more aligned with what I wanted to do long term. Other than that, I wanted to also say that I recommend a book that people read. We were talking a little bit about how do you know what you want to do. And the book I'd like to recommend is Range, R-A-N-G-E, Range. I really enjoyed the book, and it talks about how we all probably should be more like AJ. And we should learn about different things and do different things. It talks about how specialization is probably not the name of the game for the people that are gonna maybe go as the farthest. So I really think that's a good book for you guys to read. And UFO said definitely that everybody should network, not just go to career fairs. So I'm gonna move to the next question. It says it's to AJ. Ooh. Let's see. What are essential skills for an entrepreneur in tech? Why did you invest in the Harvard Summer Venture in Management program? What did you gain from this program? Also, what has pulled you towards the user interface design space and away from engineering and finance?
Hey, Christina, that's a awesome question. So I think a lot of the things that I thought were, and there's people on this panel that have, way more experience been doing, this entrepreneur thing for many, many years now. Albert, a decade running his own company. But I think for the entrepreneur in tech, especially in my experience, a lot of the things that I thought were essential skills have become I've found them to misconceptions. So, I used to think that building a tech startup was all about everything you see on TV, or watching Silicon Valley shows, or you see in the news where it's like, okay, you wake up in the morning and this person raised, $100 million, and then they're going through a Series A. I mean, those things happen, don't get me wrong, but what you don't see is that most successful companies or most useful tech companies were built in the span of a decade or longer. So a lot of companies, you don't actually hear about them until 5 years into their existence, and they just raised the nice round. And so the point I'm trying to make here is building tech that solves real problems and creates massive value. It takes time, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions. So I think your first skill is patience. Like, don't be in the rush of like what you see on the news. That's not actually how it works. Like, go study the companies you sort of admire and companies you love today. Like, Zoom is number one platform and number one product right now. It's today, but Zoom was built. Zoom was not always number one. It's just circumstances. A lot of times you just got to build the right thing, and then the right opportunity comes, and your product or your service or your technology becomes sort of useful, valuable. The first thing is patience. So one, have obviously a useful idea that you think adds value, but the other one is just be willing to do it for the joy of doing it, and put in the work to make it really cool and really useful, and have the patience to wait long. A lot of people quit too soon. A lot of people expect too much from sort of their venture or their technology, and so I guess in my position, I say the biggest thing is just patience. The Harvard Summer Venture Management Program. So if you don't know that, that's a program that Harvard has, and it's super competitive, super interesting too, because essentially it's for, I believe, your last summer in college. Harvard, there's this program where you basically apply to the Summer Venture Management Program. If you get accepted, you get to stay on Harvard's campus for about a week and go through their case study style courses, get taught by actual Harvard Business School professors, and you go through these cases. And it's a really, really powerful experience. One, because you learn a lot in a very short time, but the other thing is you also get to sort of network or meet these other students that are, equally as driven, even more driven, definitely more, like a lot more smarter than you, from all these different parts of the world. And they have these amazing internships, and they're all doing really great. So for me, that was the biggest value I got out of it, is just having those relationships. Like a lot of those people I met at Harvard, we still talk to this day. The other reason why that program is valuable, it's also a pipeline to Harvard Business School MBA. So if you're looking to do an MBA, it's probably one of the best pipelines. A lot of kids that went through that program, you get a deferred admission to Harvard Business School, so you can basically go work for the next 3 years and you come back to Harvard Business School in a row. So if you're thinking about it, I fully recommend. I think it was canceled this year because of the coronavirus, but there's a virtual version of it. So the last part is what has pulled me towards user experience design and away from engineering and finance. So this is coming from somebody that obviously petroleum engineer, worked as a petroleum engineer, and also worked on Wall Street. I worked at Goldman Sachs. And the reason why I'm not interested in user experience design is, one, I think that a lot of us have always been creative. A lot of us are creative people, but I think a lot of us don't give ourselves permission to be creative. I was one of those people when I was much younger. I didn't give myself permission to do anything creative, like singing or drawing or any of that stuff. Like, it was just like, nah, I'm not creative. Now I realize that that's BS, and everybody is creative. You just have to give yourself permission. So that was one of the things that's been interesting there. The other part is because I've come to a realization that, like, yes, I know how to code, but learning to code or learning to like create these things is not the biggest value addition if you're trying to create something useful, something helpful to people. I think the real magic is being able to design experiences that people find valuable. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you wanted to build, I don't know, you wanted to build an app, or you wanted to solve a problem. You say, I want to build an app. A lot of people think that the skill you need to have is you need to be able to be a coder. You need to go code it up and make it happen. I think that's actually a fallacy. I think what's most valuable for you to have in that situation is being able to design what an app would look like, design an experience. How should that make people feel? What do you want them to accomplish using it? And be able to design it and put your thoughts on paper. And the easy part is hiring a developer, hiring a software engineer to code it for you. So I think that's what pulled me into just design, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all people, and people have, you know, emotions, and people have yearnings, and people want to sort of interact with other people. And so really understanding people, understanding how they think, how they act, what they like, what they don't like, what triggers certain emotions, that's super important, because whatever you build, those things create experiences for people. I've never seen anybody that's built something that's not for people. We build bridges for people. We build phones for people, we build things for people. So it's really important to understand people, how to design experiences for them. So that's why I started Astro Media Lab, and that's what we do. It's very experimental, very focused on human experience design. And yeah, happy to talk more afterwards.
Awesome. So I wanted to turn quickly to the state of things. We are in the middle of a pandemic. If you asked us 2 months ago if we would be stuck in our homes, we would have said no, like how? So I recognize that everyone on the phone is dealing with this, and that college students have a unique position that they're in, because some of you are, you know, you were looking for summer internships and you don't know where that's at right now. Or if you're graduating, you're also thinking, what about my job? If you have an offer already, that's great. If you don't, then you're like, how do I make use of the degree I'm getting? So I wanted to find out from our panelists if you guys have any words of advice. And I know that when I think about this, it's do you have any advice about getting an internship? Do you have any advice about in this atmosphere that we're in? Do you have any advice about getting a full-time job? Do you have any advice about starting your own thing? Do you have any advice about minimizing your expenses, since you don't know where all of the income is going to come from? So panelists, what do you think?
Well,
not all at once.
Let me. That's a lot of questions, though. I think that this is new for most people, but I think that when you're younger, you need to focus on core, demonstrable, technical skills. What do you actually know how to do? What can you do on your own? I think to AJ's point, that's not all that you will be, but say you are an accounting major I need to know, can you use certain tools that are the tools of the trade? Can you perform certain tasks? Do you understand certain aspects of accounting? And the reason why is because working from home sounds wonderful and romantic, but the reality of the matter is it's really, really hard to train people that you're not with them in the office, okay? It's really hard. The studies are there about kind of the downsides of people who work from home. So right now, it's hard for people to hire you thinking of you as someone who doesn't know how to do anything, someone they have to pour into. That's hard. So I think that the first thing to focus on, based on the financial situation, is make yourself useful somehow, some way, start getting paid somehow, some way. And as far as your profession and things like that, focus on what are the skills. So maybe you can reach out to people in your industry and say, what are the skills I should have? I'm gonna get on my little soapbox for a minute. And I'm gonna say that for many of you, if you don't know how to use, well, not generalized, but I've noticed a pattern from younger people. Not that old, but if you don't know how to use Microsoft Office, Microsoft Outlook, Word, Excel, especially Outlook, go learn it. Because if you're majoring in many of the fields that everybody here is in, you'll probably work for an employer that uses that all the time, okay? Gmail is very popular now in colleges, but nobody really uses Gmail in the enterprise, okay? So that's an example. Like you can ask, like, what are the tools of the trade? What do I need to know how to use? I've had people work for me that are relatively young, and I noticed that they were smart enough to pick it up. But again, at times like this, when opportunities are fewer, companies are less optimistic. You know, it's kind of like the whole 4.0 comments that he made earlier. You know, you really want to be able to do work. You need to be somebody who knows how to do a lot of things. A lot of these things that normally you'd get a job, you know, they interned all these different places. You know, as an intern, you get a job, you have like a week or 2 weeks, and they teach you this software and they teach you that tool, they teach you that tool. You can do that in a YouTube video now, you know, so go, you know, so if you can figure out what those things are, you can message people on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has free 30 days for the paid kind of subscriptions where you can contact more people. If you have the funds, it's actually very well worth it if you are in the job market to just have a paid LinkedIn account. Okay, I'm just gonna put that out there. I have never had one, but I'm not looking for a job either. So if you have one, so you can contact more people and you can just ask them a question. I also suggest asking people questions they can answer. I wrote a billionaire letter once that I like, and I asked for a specific thing that he mentioned at a specific talk. And I said, can you just send it to me? And here's my email address. And they emailed it to me. That was it. You know, it's very easy. So it's like, hey, Abby, I'm going to be a lawyer. What are the top 5 tools you use as a lawyer that I can go and study on my own and have some basic proficiency in how to use? Abby can very quickly say, this, that, and that. Go do it. If you ask 10 lawyers that, you're going to be better off than most of the people who are going to be looking for a job in the job market. Because when someone looks at your resume, when I look at a resume, let me speak for myself in a way. I look for a resume, my current administrative assistant, who I swear by, my clients love, I hired her because I saw Microsoft Office on her resume. Okay, I was like, I don't have to teach this person. I do a lot of emails, calendars, all that. I don't have to teach them that. They know how to do that. Boom. So you'll be putting that on your resumes, and you all live in an era where computers do a lot of resume screening. So those keywords will also help you. Those keywords will help you on LinkedIn. And then the last thing I'll say, can you do a project for someone in your field? Is there any way that you can sign up, you know, if you are in engineering or you are in tech, and you can email AJ and say, hey, can I do something for you for a month? Is there a manual that you're looking to write in your business? Do you want to write a book? Can I write your book for you? Help you write your book? Like type it for you? You know, like, because the reason why I say that is because part of what makes it hard for people to get jobs is they have no one to speak for them, right? They have no one who can say, this person shows up on time, this person does what they're going to say, this person has A, B, C, D skills, I have experience of it. So anytime I can, I'll let somebody do something for me for a month or two, just so I have something to write a recommendation over, right? So that they have someone who recommend them. So I would be trying to do that right now. It could be a 1-week project, you know, especially for entrepreneurs. There's something he's not doing right now that you could do from your house, right? So just ask. And when you do that, you now have him as someone who can vouch for you, who can, recommend you. That's the last one I'll say. That is like underrated. People don't do it, but it'll save your life.
Okay. All right. So just to jump on and add some more what you just said, I'm an oil and gas guy. I've been an oil and gas engineer since 2008. I graduated in 2008, and that was one of the worst downturns that we've seen, or I've seen. That was my first one. So my first thought was, first of all, I was tired of going to school, but I had no choice. I had to continue going to school, so I had to get a master's. Worked out for me, because when I graduated from my master's in 2011, oil and gas was back running. Graduated in 2011, got a job. Great. 4 years later, 2015, another downturn in oil and gas. So what happens when your industry or the economy takes that dive? No matter what happens, you never stop learning and you never stop growing. Because what will happen when you try to get a job is they're going to say, and every employer knows that there was a downturn or people were losing jobs, but they're going to ask you, what did you do during that time? Or what did you do to improve your skills? So the trick is to never stop learning, never stop growing. It could be something chasing your passion. It could be getting a second degree. It could be, working for a nonprofit. If you can show that you have transferable skills, you can use Office, you can work in a team, you're able to deliver a project. If you can show those transferable skills, no matter what industry, then you're in a good position going forward, better than the other person who was just sitting down at home doing nothing. So think about, what are my strengths, or what are my weaknesses, and what I have to build on? And then take that time to say, okay, what free resources are out there? What can I work on? Let me go on YouTube and learn more about Excel. And then let me go take an Excel course, and let me go take coding class. If you want to go into something totally different from what your current path is, take that time to learn it. Right now, I'm sitting at home working, but I have a little bit of extra time, so I want to learn how to be a DJ. So I'm going to hopefully spend that extra time learning how to be a DJ. And then maybe when the industry comes back on, I'll have a side job as a DJ. It's the little things, but it all fits into your story, and then you can take that and say, I did this, and I did this when you're in that interview. There's a lot of free resources out there. Bledemy, AJ has free coding classes. So network and talk to people, and then you will find out what you can do to keep yourself growing and learning in that slum period.
Other panelists, you have something to add, Esther?
I was just gonna say that I was gonna piggyback off of those transferable skills, because I guess in my field in healthcare, like if you want to be a dentist, pharmacist, medical doctor, anything of that sort, an economic downturn at this very moment, it wouldn't affect you too much unless you're going into school right now. It's actually benefit, downtime like this, because you can use that time to study for your PCAT, MCAT, DAT, whatever it is that you're you need to get into school. It's never too early to start studying, because those tests really define whether you're going to get in or not. So that's, I guess in my field, that's one thing you can do to take advantage of the time. But another thing about those transferable skills is that and what AJ said about having a 4.0. When I was interviewing to get into school, everybody, almost everyone had almost perfect. If you got called for an interview, your GPA was good or your test scores were good. You know, they didn't call too many people for interviews if you weren't in that category. So they were looking for a lot of people that had something a little different, because there's some people that they focused when they were in school. They made the grades, they took the test, did well, and they didn't really have much to offer. And they asked questions about certain skills, like, okay, how are your, hand skills? Because in dental school, like, hand skills are very important. And if you like play the guitar, or you play the piano, or you did different things that kind of like show that you had good hand skills, that was a quality that that was favorable in that position. Or let's say you were good. Let's say if you good at working in a team or in a group. That's really favorable too, because if you're a doctor, literally everyone is coming to you and asking you. They expect you to know all the answers. So there's nobody higher than you that has the answers. You are the one that the assistants, the nurses, everyone's asking you the answers. So they want to know, how to lead a team. So, different things. It might not be, so let's say, for example, you might not get the job that's your dream job right now because of the economy. But if you are working somewhere that that's going to have some skill that can be transferred, into your field, like how he was saying, how, what are the top 5 skills that a lawyer might need to have, or whatever it might be in your field. It's you can work on those things that can actually make you stand out or be an individual, or can be transferred to where you really want to be at in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. AJ, anything to add?
Yeah, these are honestly really good. I think everyone has covered it pretty well. Ufuoma's advice, I think, was I really resonated with, because this is a time that nobody's experienced before. And so to really thrive in this time, you have to do something no one has done before. Honestly, ingenuity is going to be your biggest asset here. You're going to have to do things that I've never done before, because guess what? I've never lived through this before. I didn't have to, I didn't have to graduate online like you do. And so I just want to kind of put that out there. I've seen people that have done everything right. I was talking to a student last week that had 2 internships, was going into his 3rd internship with the same company. That's how it goes. It's a pipeline, right? You intern 3 times and then you get a full-time job. And then his internship with a major company, they just took it. He was scheduled to start this summer and he lost his internship. I've heard countless stories of people that have checked all the boxes and they just lost their internship, or they just lost their full-time offer. I've heard of people that got hired the same time, graduated the same time I did, last May, and they've already kind of been laid off. So this is happening as we speak. And so I just want to put that out there. It's a different time. Very few people had to deal with this before. But one thing that you can do is really, in this time, companies understand, even smart people are getting laid off, smart people are not getting jobs. So companies understand that this is a difficult time. And in 2 years when things get better, and in a year when things get better, whenever it gets better, people are going to be asking you what you've done with your time. So it's going to be important not just to do things like everyone has said, but also share it as you go. So for example, if you're on this call right now, if you're watching a recording, that's something not everybody's doing, right? Don't just brush it off as oh no, you're spending your time, you're acquiring new knowledge and information. So share it, go on LinkedIn and post about it and say, hey, look, I was attending a panel and I learned this information and this is the value that's added to me. And that small gesture, you'd be surprised how many people are consuming that content. You'd be surprised how many recruiters look on, recruiters are human beings just like us, they scroll on feeds, right? So share with them what you're doing. If you're working on a project, don't just work on it, actually share it. Tell people you're working on it. Tell people how to do it. How did you create it? How did you do that? Tell people about it. I think that's going to be your biggest asset in this time. So yeah.
That is awesome. I also wanted to say that I know it's 5:58, so we'll have more questions if we have any more, and then we'll wrap up when we don't have any more questions. But I also wanted to say that this might be a good time to turn some of your ideas into something more than ideas. So I know that when I was in undergrad, I always thought I wanted to start a Nigerian restaurant. And then when I was working as an engineer, you know, thankfully back then, that job was not all consuming like the job of a lawyer is now. So I had downtime. And so I had this idea. I wrote it down. And then, you know, I talked about it to some people and people thought it was a good idea. So then I turned that into a business plan. I read books on how do you open a restaurant. And I had people look at my business plan. And from that, I was linked up with some other people who were not even really close friends. And that's how Zanzibar was started, which was not an African restaurant, by the way. It was an African lounge that is no longer around, but we were in the game for a good 6 years. And that was from idea to actuality. And I read books, I did my business plan, I talked to people. That's how that idea came to reality. And I think that we all have ideas in our minds. I mean, I have this book that I carry around and I have an idea list within the book. It's still just ideas, but when you don't have as much stuff to do and you're going stir crazy inside, which I don't think that's you guys' deal if you're in college right now and still taking classes online. But when you have some time, you know, watching Little Fires Everywhere or Homeland is good, but maybe also take some time to turn some of your ideas into the next step in that, you know, life cycle of an idea. The other thing is, I noticed that I don't think that this would apply to the generation of our participants today, but if this is you, maybe you can overcome it. You really do need to be on LinkedIn. It's mandatory. It is not something that you can think, you know, I'm going to opt out of this. Like my mom opts out of Facebook, and I hear 17-year-olds and 21-year-olds say Facebook is for old people. LinkedIn is not one of those things that you can just choose to do or not do. I think you need to be on it, and your photo needs to be professional, and your headline needs to be on point, and you need to put all of your different steps that you've taken on there, and then you can toot your own horn, like AJ said. So please update your LinkedIn, and then when you find out about an opportunity, go look on LinkedIn and see who else knows someone that is tied to that opportunity. So like, let's say right now you go and you use LinkedIn to look at the jobs feature, and you find out when you click on that company that, you know, that these people work there, and then you look and you see that you have these mutual connections. You can contact those mutual connections, even if they're not strong connections. So let's say after right now, after our call today, you linked up with all the people, all the speakers that you see here, which I think you should do. And then you go and you do that, you look at a job and you see that I'm one of your mutual connections. You can send me a message. You can say, I heard you speak at that talk. I'm thinking about applying for a job there, and I see that you're a mutual connection with this person. Do you mind making a connection? It takes me 5 minutes to make that introduction, and I'll know whether that person is cool people to introduce you to, and I'll make that introduction. You'll talk to them. You'll find out the intel you need for that job, and then you'll take it from there. That's how things are done. That's how connections are used to make money, to make things happen, and I think you really should try to do that if you can. All right, so did I miss any questions?
I think someone had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to try to read it again real quick because someone said that the hardest part is repetitiveness, and what's the hardest part about being a dentist, and what's the best thing about being a dentist, if I own my own practice, and if I did, how do I build my business skills? The repetitiveness is actually a good thing for me. Because there is a lot of times that people are going to walk in and you're going to be like, what do I do? And guess what? You got to figure it out. So there are lots of things like crowns and fillings and root canals and extractions that I'm like, thank God, you know, I know how to do that with my eyes closed. And then there's, you know, surgeries I do or things that I do that's not what I see and every day. So, you know, even though those things are challenging, and I love those things because it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you learning every time you see something new. you learn something new. So that's why, you know, they call it practicing dentistry, practicing medicine, or whatever it is, because you're constantly going to be researching. You constantly have to stay up to date on the new innovations, new technologies, new medications that are coming out that people are taking, the new ways to do certain procedures, how they did certain surgeries before. They don't do it that way anymore. Things that they didn't have 10 years ago, for example, implants and things like that. You know, a lot of older dentists, they didn't learn that in dental school. They had to learn that in practice. So I like the repetitiveness, because like I get to do those things easy. It's like clockwork. And then I do get the challenging things every once in a while. The best part about being a dentist is, like, for the most part, if you don't own your own practice, I go to work like everyone else at, 8 a.m. and I can leave at 5 o'clock, and, I can go to happy hour or whatever, and I'll be done. There's some other medical, professions that I'm just like, they're on call. They gotta, I work on Saturdays sometimes, but that's, a personal choice, because a lot of my patients don't want to take off of work or bring their kids out of school. So I chose, because I don't have kids or anything yet. So I have the free time. So I volunteered to work on Saturdays, and it's lucrative for me because a lot of people want to come on the weekends. So I get to really choose my schedule. I get to tell them that this is when I want to come in. So I typically work 4 days a week, unless I want to work on Saturdays. So that's, I would say, the best part about being a dentist, because my schedule, it's works for me. Also about owning my own business. So that's definitely something I aspire to do, is open my own practice. The only thing stopping me from doing it at this current moment is student loans, because I don't want to have a practice loan and student loans I'm paying on at the same time. And starting a practice can cost you like $300,000 to $500,000. So it's just, it's part of the business. You're going to make it back. You're going to make the money easy to pay off those business loans. But it's just, personally for me, I'm just hustling to get the student loans finished, and then I can pursue that. They do give you some business classes in dental school. They're laughable.
Okay.
They make you do a business plan. They make you build a practice. At least at my school, they make you build your own practice and market it and do all that kind of stuff. So we have a business class. I'll be honest, I slept in my business classes because I was up all night studying for my dental classes. So I didn't take them seriously. But you learn a lot of the business on the job. I would say, since I've been practicing it for about 3 years, every office I worked at, I was in the front. I was trying to learn all this stuff about insurance. A lot of doctors don't do their own billing and coding, but I'm like up there like, okay, how much does this cost? How much does that? How do you bill this out? My first job at dental school is actually working in private practice for one of my mentors. He kind of taught me a lot about running his own practice. I learned a lot of it on the job. I do have my own LLC, not within a practice as in a building, just doing my contracting. So that is teaching me how to run a business in itself, as far as finances go, supplying myself, setting my rates, build on my schedule. As far as hiring people, I'm my only employee, so I don't have that experience yet. But as far as the practices I work in, I'm a part of the people that I get to choose my assistants in my front desk who works for the office or the practice. So a lot of that you learn on the job. So as far as business goes.
Awesome. So I saw a couple of other questions. The first question is, many of you are business oriented, but come from different backgrounds. What did you turn to teach you about business, creating business plans, specific books, courses, mentors? Also, how did you find your mentors to guide you in your respective fields? And the other question we had was, Albert, what are the top 5 skills for an accountant?
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm trying to think of 5. To the earlier question, How do you find your mentors? We already said it, LinkedIn. Okay. So that's one, but you can find mentors anywhere, honestly. So I was going to give you a suggestion from someone I know who is very good at being successful at things very quickly. And he says that you should not do anything. Well, he does not do anything without meeting and having a sit down an hour or two with 5 people who have done it. Okay. And I don't know that it's a guarantee of success, but I know that everything that I have failed at, I have not done that. So I will suggest to you that when we talk about LinkedIn, LinkedIn facilitates networking, but it's not new. This networking has always been a thing. Networking has always been done, but now you're in an era where it facilitates, makes it easier for you to find out, you know, what dentists somebody you know knows, or what accountant somebody you know knows. Just makes it easier. But yeah, so I would figure out what you're trying to do and ask the people you know who they know that has done it. I say preferably in the last 5 years, if you're about to start it, just because the world keeps changing so rapidly now. I definitely think that all of you, regardless of who your parents are, regardless of who your friends are, there's another thing I'll share with you that's from another author, which is basically every year you need to come up with a way to communicate to the 100 or so people who love you most what you're trying to do. And when we say 100 or so people, I mean these are the people who anything they could do to make you successful and make you happy, they would. They don't expect anything in return. It could be your mom, it could be your grandpa, it could be your grandma, it could be your best friend, doesn't matter. Your job is to make them understand what it is you are trying to do, number one, which you may say, oh, my dad didn't study engineering, how would he understand engineering? Well, let's do it. The next thing is help them to understand how to spot an opportunity for you. So if you repair cars, you can say, Mom, if you ever see a guy driving a car with more than 10 tires, I can fix those cars, right? You just, something that they can observe, something they can spot. This is useful for you because it keeps people around you who care about you up to date about what you're trying to do. You'd be surprised who they know. And I mention these people because these people have no shame in promoting you, right? Your grandma might be on a plane and say, my son is a dentist. If you're in Houston, you need to get your teeth cleaned by my son. And they're like, lady, be quiet, but she don't care. She's so proud of you. She's so excited about you. Those people, I meet so many self-employed people and we struggle, and people haven't told the people who are crazy about them what they're trying to do. And they wonder why they're still struggling. So tell those people what you're trying to do. As far as accountants, and then, so I mentioned that to respond to the question about books. I'm a very bookish person, but I will caution you about reading too much. And the reason why is because when you read, it's a solitary activity most of the time. So it's very easy to read and think you figured it all out, or just read 100 books and feel like you've read a lot. I always try to test what you learn in books in the real world. Try to test it or stress test it with real people who have experience or knowledge that qualifies them to agree or disagree. And as far as skills for accountants, I think the most important thing to be successful in accounting is you have to be really good, comfortable. I would say you have to be about as comfortable with words and numbers. So many people think it's about being good at math. Accounting doesn't involve that much math. The math that I use every single day, I knew by the age of 10. But you have to be ridiculously good at it and comfortable doing it all the time. You can't be someone who gets tired of like making calculations. I do it all day. But at the same time, you have to read a lot. Any accounting statement you see is about 95% words. So accounting is very, very qualitative. It doesn't seem that way to people. So I would say those two. And then I'll take you to something. There's a book that you might want to check out. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a very, 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 very old book. I think I saw Abby nodding. And This book says it was written in the 30s, I think. And it actually says that they studied a bunch of engineers. Believe it or not, they studied a bunch of engineers, and they're trying to figure out what makes people successful, financially successful. And they found that their technical knowledge was responsible for only 15% of their success. Their people skills was responsible for 80-something% of their 85, that's what it is, 85% of their success. So somebody asked earlier, why is AJ working on user experience? That's because he knows that. He knows that the best tool is not the one people like to use the most. So if you're a good worker, you're really good at what you do, you need to get to know people and bridge the gap between being good at what you do and being the one that people want to do it. I feel like that's a gap. And oftentimes, the best product, the best singer, the best rapper, the best actor is not the one winning the Oscars, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because there's skill required, but, and I don't even want to say it's a popularity contest. It's just more about, you need to be thinking about the needs of the people who are ultimately going to be asking you to do the work. If you're thinking about their unique needs, you might find that you didn't need to read like all of that book. You just needed to read the half of it that actually applies to what they're going to ask you to do. And then it becomes less about, you know, checking off lists and getting on Facebook or LinkedIn and saying how you read, 50 books, and more about being able to say, here are the 50 or so people that I have impacted their lives this year, even though, this person never needed me to read a whole book. So I can't brag about reading full books anymore, really. Many books are references for me now, because it's more about what am I trying to do? And then what's the part of the book that covers it? Read that part, put it down, get back to work, So I hope that's helpful. I can't do more than those two tips for an accountant. But I would say focus on, don't underestimate social skills and people skills, being able to explain things to people of all walks of life. That's where the money is. That's where the money is. Also,
you need a good suit and tie, and a good haircut, good suit and tie, and be a snapping looking gentleman like Albert. Never forget the power of a good suit and tie.
Yep.
Looking sharp.
Yeah. And you don't need pants. It's 2020.
I was gonna make a point about
I'm wearing pants.
The mentor thing. The mentor thing is something that I hold dear to my heart. Like finding a mentor in any aspect of your life, not just with your career, with anything you want to be good at in life. You find somebody that's doing it better or doing it how you want it to be done, and do not be afraid to ask that person how they're doing it. Like even in my field, I feel like every job I've gotten, or even when I was gotten into school, it wasn't because of anything that special that I did, besides, go to school and study and make good grades. But I feel like a lot of doors opened to me because I just asked questions to people. And I just asked them, I was like, oh, how did you score this on that test? Or how did you get that 4.0? Or how did you get into this school? And I would just be like, okay, once I got out of school, I was like, okay, how did you open your practice? Or, how did you learn this skill? How did you learn implants? How did you learn this surgery? And I have like 5-6 different mentors, and in the specific thing I want to be good at. And so it's easy to find those things, like just like coming to conversations like this, or you can find them on LinkedIn, or like AJ said, when you're going to these conferences. There's been conferences that I went to, I heard somebody talk and I was like, ooh, she was saying some stuff. Let me go to her after and ask her, what was her experience? And I got their contact information just like that. So putting yourself out there, going to events, asking questions, that's gonna get you far.
So we had a question. If you're an early professional, would you recommend switching jobs early for overall experience / pay rise reasons within the first professional 10 years, for example? I'm gonna tackle this a little bit and then see what other people have to say. So, you know, it's really a matter of personal preference. But I also think that staying at one company for your entire career is, let's use the word a privilege, because it's just not how it'll be for most people. And I think that that's just the way that it is for millennials, and then for the generations that come after them. I think it's a matter of preference. So when I was an engineer, I was at Chevron for 7 years, and I thought, I'm going to be here for life. I'm going to take the pension at the end, and I'm going to, they give you the pen after a pen, I think, after 1 year, and they give you a button after 5. I'm like, yes, I want the 10-year and the 20-year. And then, life happened. I wanted to be a lawyer. I couldn't continue working for Chevron to do that. But I was there for 7 years, which is actually a lot. And during that time, I had someone else who graduated at the same time as me, who in the same 7 years, he made it to like maybe 5 companies in the same 7 years. And, like some of his jumps were, within months, some of them were a year. But I'll say that at the end of the 7 years, he like low-key made more money than me, because each successive jump came with a pay increase. But then when you think about the downturn that came later, sometimes when you're the last person in, you are the first person out. Like if a company has to make layoffs, then they start with the people that have been there the least, that have the least seniority. So you kind of have to think about that when you're switching. Within the law, I'm at a place, I just got here, I work for Reed Smith. I just got here in September. I really had to think long and hard about my last move, because I was at Haynes & Boone, was my first law firm. I was there for 4 years. I said I was going to make partner there. I didn't know it, but at 4 years there, I was like, this ain't happening here. Like, I'm about to move around because I don't see the writings on the wall here. So then I made the switch to another firm, and I switched from that firm within like a year and a half. And I was like, I don't want to be that person who switches a lot. But it's not about my intellect. It's not about my, what I know. It's about the opportunity that was best for me and the fill in the blank % increase in pay that I got. So you kind of have to do what makes sense for you, but keeping in mind that, a lot of people value longevity, but then they don't value it as much as they did 20 years ago.
Let me share something on that. I started my career in 2009. I worked for Deloitte for 2 years. I left. I started my practice on the side. I worked for the next company for 11 to 12, summer of 12. So that's 1.5 years. So 2 years, 1.5 years, and the third employer 1 year, because we had layoffs, and I was actually laid off from the third job. So I'll say this, almost like last time with the career, picking a career. Decide first which game you're playing. Do you want to be successful, or do you want to be rich? I'm not saying that the two are mutually exclusive, but if you can pick one over the other, your strategy is clearer. If you want to be successful, loyalty helps. Being at a place everywhere you work, at least 3 to 5 years, is going to help you a lot. Why am I saying this? Because many times the people that, like the friend that Abby described, they get there, they learn the job, they do the job well enough, but they're not there long enough to build relationships. So sometimes 7 years in, they got nobody to vouch for them because everybody kind of just worked for them for a little while and barely really knew them. And people don't, and you're not there long enough for people to really feel like you've got their back. So when you're down and out, are they going to have your back? We're all basically the result of all of our relationships, all of the favors that we can get when we're in a tough time. So I think that if you want to be successful, if you really want to be successful, you need to factor in some loyalty. Spend, every job before you leave it, try to work there long enough that you know how to do the job, but you've built some relationships. Now, the other side of it, you want to have a lot of money, changing jobs, the first 5 to 10 years of your career, your pay can rise a lot statistically in most fields. The first 20 years of your careers is when you will have the most increases in your pay. So there's a point to maximizing that and taking advantage of it. There's nothing wrong with that. Though, as Abby said, you need to know what game you're playing and don't shoot yourself in the foot. Know that you're always going to be the newest person. Know that you're always going to be the first person they're think about letting go of, because you may have the shortest severance. I don't know. She's not going to comment on that. That's employment law stuff. But know that you will also build a brand for yourself as an opportunist, as the person who will leave at the first sign of something better. That's not, people aren't, let's just say people aren't chomping at the bit to hang out with the person who is going to leave their crew once a better party shows up. You know, people like to think that you're with them because you want to be with them, even though we all do it for money. But people like to think that there's something about them that you like, and that doesn't send that message at all. So if you're going to play that game, just know that. I think personally, the person with less longevity at each job from a financial standpoint should have the maximum amount of savings. And should, you know, when those raises come, you should be looking to save them, because you're going to need it. You know, you can give up 5 years of longevity at a place and go take a job for, let's say, a 20% raise and get let go within 1 year. Okay. And the previous job, if you got let go after 6 years, they might have paid you 1 month's salary per year, which would have been 6 months. Then the new job, they would pay you only 1 month. You know, the difference plus the 20% doesn't quite beat the previous job. A lot of companies 401k match. A lot of companies 401k match. Yeah, I did say I have 2 kids, right? A lot of companies 401k match.
Dad, why do you have this?
Okay, you have to go now. You have to go. Okay, a lot of companies 401k match vests. Okay, it's subject to vesting. So if you leave after a year or 2, you're getting nothing, right? So, you know, if I'm coaching someone, I'm making sure they understand those things. That if you're chasing the money, a lot of times there's a lot of math involved there. Employers take advantage of people because they know people don't do all of that math. You know, there are jobs that you'll see a job, let's say there's a lot of engineering here. Let's say the Shells, the Exxons, and so on. Typically, like the big 5 employers, I'm generalizing a lot here, but typically the big 5 employers, the most prestigious employers, will probably pay you less than like the next 5 after them, okay? Or the next 10 or 20. Because the next 10 or 20, very few people are like grow up wanting to work for them. They have to strive harder to get talent. So they're typically trying to get people from those other employers to hire them. So you have to understand that equation, but at the same time, the big employers are usually the most stable, because especially in businesses like oil and gas, the bigger companies are more stable. So they may have better retirement benefits. They may have, maybe not in oil and gas, but they may have pensions and things like that. You may go somewhere where you're getting paid more, but you're giving up a pension, which is actually worth more. So yeah, I say first try to decide which game you're in. Can you afford to live on your income and just pursue success? Or are you gonna go for money? If you do a hybrid, it gets even more complicated than that. But I just wanted to paint the 2 extremes and what you're ultimately signing up for. Because typically loyalty is pretty well rewarded. You don't need to be somewhere for 10 or 20 years, but I'd say try to be somewhere like 4 or 5 years. That's what I would say. Not like me, don't do like me.
So it's 6:28. I'd like to give our panelists, let's say 30 seconds or so for parting words, with the exception of AJ. You seem to be the person that can answer this person's question most closely, if at all. Tosin said, I'm in the IT field. If anyone here can speak to that field specifically. I don't know that you actually can speak to that, AJ, but if you can, you get more than 30 seconds. Then we'll do parting words.
Okay, so just for the sake of time, I'll say I think that came from Tosin, if I remember correctly. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and we can talk in depth. And I'll also put my website. Just find me on any platform and let's talk about that, just to respect everyone's time. But in terms of parting words for me, I think I wanted to touch on one of the questions I think that came in also is around mentorship. So I think the whole concept of like having a mentor that you sort of like go to, or a mentor that you talk to, I think it's overrated. And the point I'm trying to make here is I think a lot of times we overvalue our ego over the actual content we want to consume. And what that means is, let's say you meet like maybe, I don't know, some millionaires, some billionaires, some tech founders, somebody that you really aspire to want to learn what they do. 9 times out of 10, they've done a lot of podcasts. They've probably written a book. They've been featured in blogs and articles. Yet you want to sort of, talk to them and you want to like, oh, can you talk to me? So you can ask them something they've probably already said in one of your podcasts like a year ago, right? And so the point I'm trying to make is, if you really, from a rational logic perspective, I think if you want to connect with somebody, you want to learn from someone, the first thing you should probably do is go consume all the content they already created before you start bugging them and asking them for things that they've already said. And that would do one thing. That would want to ensure that you're always getting the information that you need. But it also makes sure that like when you're actually connecting with them, it's not because you just want to stroke your ego. It's because there's something that you've truly not learned from all the content they've already put out. And that's the approach I would recommend to you. That's something that I find that a lot of people just misunderstand. But your mentor doesn't have someone that actually knows you. You can learn from somebody that you don't know or doesn't know you. My best mentors, they could care less about me. But I just want to put that out there.
Esther.
So I was trying to take mine off of mute, but I guess my closing remarks is just to tap on everything that we've discussed today. If you haven't figured out what your calling is, what your passion is, do not freak out. You have a lot of time and opportunity. Try different things out, study different things, internships like people have talked about, shadowing, especially in the medical field. You can shadow in every different type of field that you can to figure out what it is that you want to do. Researching online, things like that. You just have to put yourself out there. Sometimes things won't just drop on your lap. You just have to be in the space and the environment and the opportunity to realize I hate this, I never want to do this again, or I love this, I want to know more about it. And if you want to know about a particular field or subject, ask questions, and that's how you get to know if it's something for you. And trying it, just try it out. Another thing, as far as being in college, I just want to say, if in my field, if you want to go to dental school or medical school or pharmacy school, it's very expensive. So if you can save as much money as you can as an undergrad, do it. Apply to as many scholarships as you can. If you can stay at home, if you can, make your lunch, do things like that, save money as a college student, because if you want to go to grad school, that's expensive, and they don't give grants. They don't give too many scholarships and grants for that. Not to say it's impossible. They gave me a little bit, but it wasn't, it didn't even take care of a fraction of it. So be wise when you're an undergrad as far as how you're spending your funds and taking your classes. You don't want to waste money. And like everyone said before, just reach out to all of us on LinkedIn or email. I think I sent someone my email. And yeah, thanks for everyone being here today.
Thanks, Esther. Albert?
You have everything inside of you already. And so the most important thing is just do things and be aware of what you do and interact with people and and kind of reflect on that, how those experiences make you feel, get feedback, take it seriously, and more things will come out to you. So I think one thing I will share in addition to that is Mark Cuban once said that you should think about what you spend your most time on and that's probably what you should be doing. He said it may not be what you like the most, may not be what you think you should be doing, because I think many times, especially folks are younger, and I definitely think that around 25 or younger, I was still thinking with my parents' mind in terms of what I should be doing. Even though they never wanted me to do accounting, I was still influenced by their perspective. So sometimes just step outside of that, and, you know, if you were somebody else's kid, what would you be doing? You know, and I think all the feedback from here is good for you. And, you know, you might listen to this more than once, share it with your friends, discuss it with your friends on the same road. And then I'll end with, don't be stingy with information. I think that if you have other friends in the same field looking for the same jobs, there's no reason you can't strategize. I talk to multiple people who do what I do who for the same type of clients. And, you know, there's plenty of money out there. There's plenty of jobs out there. You'll get further longer. So the bottom line is, I've learned that in my career path so far is to emphasize relationships. When I don't know something, to think about who knows it and how to find them. And if I want to do something, to find somebody to do it with. I don't care what it is. I was like, who am I going to do this with? I don't do anything alone anymore. So, because you achieve so much more that way. Thank you, everybody, also for listening. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Albert. So I just want to, my last words are words of hope. We are living in really weird times. We're living in the twilight zone in a lot of ways, but this too shall pass. We will get through this time. That's kind of a prayer and a statement. So think about what you want for yourself on the other side of this and work towards that. I am suffering from motivation. I lack it many days because of, you know, the times that we're in, but find it wherever you find it and work towards whatever your goals are. And think outside the box, because these are very interesting times. It requires for all of us to think outside of the box. So write more if that's aligned with what you want to do eventually. If you don't have a job, look outside of your core area, because as much as some people are closing down shop, other people are opening up shop. So maybe you can retool and try to fill a gap somewhere. If you don't have a job this summer, it's time to get at it, get after it, you know, like contact people, see if anybody could use any remote help. That'll help you fill in some gaps in your resume. So it'll all work out. So I just want everyone to know that we will, 1 year from now, we'll be reminiscing on this time and we will all be good. All right, thanks everyone. Ufo, over to you.
Oh yeah, so great job everyone. Thank you guys. Thank you the panelists. Thank you all for joining in. Last words, just motivation. The fact that you already signed in and you spent this hour and a half planning for your future, figuring out networking, shows that you're already on the right track. The fact that you got an email to join this meeting, it means either you're already part of an organization like NAMC, or you've been to one of our programs, or you're networking with people who invite you to stuff like this. So kudos to you. You're already doing way more than I was doing when I was a college freshman or a senior for that matter. So you're on the right track. Stay learning, stay safe. And, you know, like Abby said, this too will pass. So think outside the box. And secondly, we would love to do this again, maybe once every month. Because more than likely it will be like this for a little while, but that's okay. So we will have this probably again next month. So look out for an email. We will send the recordings. We'll probably put the recording on the website. So I know someone asked a question about the recording. It will probably go on the website. I'm not sure if we can send it out to everybody, but it will probably go on the NAMC website and we'll share that with you. So thank you all for joining in, and then we'll see you again in about a month.
Stay safe, guys.
Be safe.
Bye.